What's happening, everybody? Jason right here with another great guest for the Intentionally Inspirational podcast. We've got Steve Gordon this week. He is the founder and the CEO of the Unstoppable CEO. He is a podcast host himself and an author. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hey, Jason. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. No problem at all. So I would love to kind of hear your story in your own words from where it all began for you. Where did you say, you know what, I don't want to work for anybody else anymore up until today? So you can tell us the long version, the short version, whatever you like.
Well, sadly, it's getting longer and longer every year. But it all started. When I got out of college, I actually have a technical background.
Yeah.
And so I went to work for an engineering consulting firm, tiny little discipline of engineering called geomatics that nobody's ever heard of. Nobody knows what it is, but if you've ever used Google Maps, you can thank somebody with that background. And I was the 10th employee there. And after I'd been there for about 4 years, the founder came to me and said, you're going to take over as CEO. I happened to be out with the birth of our first daughter. And he called me while I was out and said, yeah, when you get back, we're going to do this. And I'm like, okay, this is different. Yeah. And I had no idea really what I was doing at that point. But, he had a really great vision, for transitioning the firm, and he wanted to give that a long time horizon. And so here I am, 28 years old, and I'm running a small consulting firm. And ran that firm for about 10 years. We were able to grow it, had a great team. It was a lot of fun. And I just realized that I really loved the sales and marketing part of it. And so about now 10 years ago, I split off and started our current firm. And we help other professional service providers go out and get great clients and do it in a real systematic way with marketing that for the most part we do for them. And it's just a lot of fun.
Very nice. We are definitely going to talk about some marketing, man. I love that. It's good stuff. So at this most recent journey, did you ever reach a point where you thought, oh man, this might not work out? Maybe there's some things you didn't foresee. I'm just curious about that.
Well, I tell you, it's one thing to kind of take over and run and grow a firm that is operating already.
Yeah.
When I took over that first business, it had been around for, I think, 10 years at that point. Mm-hmm. Had a client base, had cash flow, all that. It's a totally different exercise to start from scratch.
Yes, it is.
And it was more difficult than I anticipated. It took a couple of years to really kind of get things rolling.
It is not for the faint of heart, is it?
No, I joke when I do speeches that like this whole entrepreneur thing, this is not something that normal people would ever sign up for. No. It's like you're going to work 4 or 5 or 10 times harder than you've ever worked before. You're going to worry more than you ever have. And there's no guarantee that you're going to get paid. And what do you think? You want to do that? And of course we all go, yeah, that's for me.
Yeah.
And most other people shake their heads and go, this is the stupidest thing ever, but somebody's got to do it, right?
Yeah. You'll love this. So I'll give you a peek into my real life. So last night I'm sitting where I'm sitting now, and I'm leaving for Tennessee Sunday, and I'll be gone for 6 days. And anytime you leave home, my wife, I used to travel in corporate America. So my wife hates when I'm not here. She can't sleep. We've got 2 kids. One gets up at 5:30 for school. One gets up at 7:30. So it's just really disruptive. And I'm looking at my whiteboard, which is kind of, I don't know why it's on the floor, but it's been on the floor over there for a while. It's kind of over my computer there. And I was looking at it last night and I was like, I know what I have to get done before the weekend, but why am I not getting it done? I was like, what is wrong with me? And I was like, my mind is just foggy and I'm mentally exhausted. Like I'm recognizing like, I just need to go to bed and hope Friday's better because I've got myself worn down to this point where I'm ineffective. So go to bed, wake up this morning. I'm like, oh man, I didn't wake up at all. Awesome. And I've spent my whole morning, not touched my plan yet today. I've had to do some administrative cleanup and discovery. Basically lost a team member this morning, had to clip all of that access and take care of it. And everything's good there now. It's like now I haven't even started what's on the plan for the day. And I always kind of think to myself that when most people think of being their own boss, it's the most exciting thing in the world. But like you said, the reality of it, it can be downright not fun at all. Is it still worth it for me? Absolutely. But is it for the faint of heart? No. Do you like firing people? Do you like you say, sometimes not getting paid? Do you like all the risk and stuff like that as well? So it's just a really interesting point you bring up there. Why do you think most entrepreneurs don't make it? Why do you think that first 2 years has such a high casualty rate for startups?
Well, so I think a lot of people get into it and, um, they get into it not really committed.
Hmm.
And, and I think that's a large part of it. I mean, if you don't really understand what you're coming into, it quickly can become pretty intimidating. And I think a lot of people just decide, look, I can go back and do better
Yeah.
working, inside somebody else's system rather than inventing my own.
Yep.
So I think you see a lot of it there, but then I actually believe that the bigger risk, I mean, you see all the business failure stats, right? And they're scary, but I think the bigger risk is not the failure end of it. I think it's when you get past that and you become what we call a survivor business.
Hmm.
And we see this with businesses that they make it past the failure and they sort of, they're growing at the beginning because the entrepreneur has got time and motivation, and they get out there and hustle and they build up a client or customer base. And then they get to a certain point where the entrepreneur runs out of time
Hmm.
and they start to plateau.
Hmm.
And at that point, you know, either the entrepreneur invests in systems and people to free up time
Hmm.
and to drive further growth, and then they keep going. Or what I think happens much more often is they don't make those investments. They don't invest in the mindset shift that is required to get there. And so they just stay on this plateau, and they might stay there forever. And
Yep.
it's almost like you're in this like deadly limbo because you think, gosh, I was pretty successful and things were going well. And then what happened?
Hmm.
So I think it can really grind you down.
What's funny about that is I can think of a handful of people now. So I've been in this business 4 years, been full time 2 years in March. And I can think of people that were in their business before I even went out on this particular jump. I've jumped corporate America twice. Will not be going back, my friend. You've got my word. But I can remember, so about 5 years ago, people that are in the same place today that they were in their business then, because they literally can't wrap their mind around the value of hiring somebody else to help with even a little bit of stuff. It's like, let somebody take 5 hours a week off your plate. Some money out of my pocket. I'm like, you're never going to grow. You have the wrong mindset. Like, why do you think all big companies that make a lot of money have employees or people working for them or contractors? It's not because they want to get money out of their pockets, because they understand that you can't scale your time. Some people just don't get it.
Yeah.
So, um, so very, very interesting. No, that's an interesting thing you said. They get past the struggle, and then they just kind of hang out in this in between, because I guess they're kind of at a crossroads. And I guess people, instead of making a decision, sometimes just kind of like walk in circles, don't they?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. And I think, they get to that point where they run out of ideas about how to create demand.
Yep.
Because the fundamental reason that the businesses don't grow is they don't have enough opportunity coming to them.
Yep.
Which is the purpose of marketing. It's what we do. It's what you guys do.
Yep.
And I think it's that lack of opportunity that really frustrates people. But you'll get a business owner who, did really well kind of going out, developing new business belly to belly. And when they run out of time, they don't have any new methods that scale
Yep.
to continue to get business. And what we see, and I don't know, maybe you can, relate to this. We see a lot of business owners that just like to dabble then. So they will get, well, here's the latest, trick that they found. Oh, I'm going to send this message template on LinkedIn to, my 5,000 people or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's going to do it. Well, then that doesn't work, or they only try it for, a week and a half. And then they go, all right, well, now I'm going to post on Medium, and then I'm going to do Instagram, and now I'm going to do TikTok, and then maybe it's that I need to go to this referral group. And what we see is that they'll dabble in a lot of this stuff. They'll never focus on any one thing long enough to really master it. And, one of the things that I believe with marketing is that all marketing works.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you and I sat here and we just had people call in and say, hey, what about putting out those yellow signs on the street corners? Does that work? And I'd go, yeah, that works. We could come up with a plan to make that work for probably just about any business, right?
Yep.
And, one after another, we could point to an instance of where that worked, but where it works is generally where somebody has focused on that strategy.
Yep.
And they've taken the time to really understand it and master it, whatever it is.
Yep. It's funny. I almost feel like you've bugged my office because I've had this conversation a lot lately with people. And I've said, man, there's somebody that's been successful doing everything. They're like, which social platform? And say, well, where's your audience at? Know where your audience is. And there's several you can pick for pretty much any scenario. So the biggest problem, like you said, is nobody's consistent. Oh, I tried this and it didn't work. But didn't you just start that Monday? You shut it down. It's Friday. It's literally not even been 5. Like, really? People give up so fast because they hear about somebody for the first time and they hear about their story like, oh, they had overnight success, but overnight really means 12 years, and it was a horrible 12 years. So no, I'm with you. That consistency piece is so important. It's like working out. If you're overweight and you want to become a bodybuilder and you work out for 1 week, newsflash, nothing's going to happen. It doesn't happen like that. So I love this. Talk to me about some necessary breakthroughs that somebody like me would have to find true freedom in their business.
Well, so I think the first is to look at that idea of engineering demand. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you can solve that one, where you have more new opportunities coming to you than what you really need, then that actually ripples into the rest of the business because it creates cash, mm-hmm. and cash solves all problems in business.
Yep.
And it also alleviates that, 2 a.m. waking up in the middle of the night in the cold sweat going, where's my next client coming from? Or how am I going to make payroll? Because, you've got 4 opportunities next week or 10 opportunities or 100 or whatever is a healthy number for you.
Yep.
That's one of the things like I look at every day. All right, well, how many, we call them a right fit call. So when we first meet with somebody, first thing that we do is we get on a call for 20 minutes. They can't buy anything. I'm not going to sell them anything. Just, are we a fit? Do we like each other? Do their goals match what we do? And, and I'm looking for a number, of those on my calendar every week in and week out. And if I can see that I've got at least that many, or hopefully 1 or 2 more than what I want, and we're having trouble getting them scheduled in, then everything's good in the world. I mean, there really isn't anything that can hurt us, because we know, for every 10 people we talk to, a certain number are going to become clients. And so kind of getting that piece solved, I think, is the first step to getting that freedom. And I see business owners focus on a lot of other things sometimes when they don't have that solved. And then they, so they go into these like weird spasmodic cycles of freaking out because they don't have enough business when they're, and they're trying to maybe make an investment in their team or whatever, but then they got to pull back from it because they don't have enough demand. Yep. If you solve the demand problem first, everything else can flow from that. And people get worried all the time. Well, if I create too much demand, I have more people coming to me than I can serve. They're just going to go away. Well, no, the answer to that is just raise your prices.
Absolutely.
And now you're creating more cash for less effort. And so it's really pretty simple at the end of the day, but that's the first, I think, thing to focus on. Mm-hmm. The second is to really think about how you can free your own time. Because a lot of times I'll see business owners get themselves into a position where the business sort of centers around them so tightly that they got their hands in everything. Nobody can do it as well as they can.
Yep.
And, um, and I think we all fall into that from time to time. But I got really clear as we really started to grow about 5 years ago that there were only three things that I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that word want really intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Not three things I have to do, but there were three things in the business that I wanted to do. I love doing the marketing. I love coming up with ideas that are going to help our clients. And I really enjoy talking to our potential clients in those initial calls and
Yep.
brainstorming with them how we're going to solve their problems. And if I could like map out my perfect week, I've got some time doing each of those things throughout the week and big swaths of free time to think, because that's what fuels those activities for me. So getting clear on all that allows you then to be really clear about what's got to get off your plate to make that happen. So anything that isn't in that little circle has got to go away. And I don't see very many business owners getting intentional about, okay, what's in the circle that I want to do? And then, quarter by quarter, taking things out. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yep.
So I go through this exercise every quarter where I'll list out all of the stuff that, that just off the top of my head. I don't do a time tracking or any of that because that drives me crazy. But
Yep.
I'll just list out, well, what are the things that, off the top of my head, I can remember that I've done this last quarter that I really, really enjoyed. What motivated me?
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that I did pretty well? They don't really bug me. They're just sort of neutral. And, put those in another column. And then in the third column, I'll put the stuff that just totally drives me just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the stuff that's in that column, I get with my assistant and we go, okay, well, this is all going away off of my plate. Let's decide what still needs to be done and let's figure out who's going to do it because I'm not doing it anymore.
Yep.
And little by little, a quarter at a time, you get closer and closer to really having the freedom to work on the things that you want to work on. And, if you'll go through that exercise, you'll notice that the growth of the business actually starts to really accelerate because you're freed up to do the things that actually are adding value. So I think that to me is the second key. And then kind of corollary to that is just, we talked about it earlier, being open to relying on other people. And there are a lot of business owners that I think pull back from that. And they'll do it at a very low level, but when anything gets at all complex, they feel like they've got to hang on tightly to it. And, you've got to find a way to let that go.
Yep. It's interesting because there's a couple of things you said that really speak to me. One is pieces of my business run completely without me, which is awesome. So it's like, this is what the future looks like for all of it. For me, my perfect three would be also the marketing, which I don't get a lot of time to do our marketing. I'm usually helping clients, but I really enjoy it. I'm a great strategist and I'm a phenomenal architect. So those are the things I really like. But if I could just do what I wanted, I think I would do, like you said, the new business call. I love sales. I'm really good at sales, getting those clients in, designing the strategy and letting somebody else build it. The building part takes the time. It's not hard, but my time is better spent other places. And something you said that I realized kind of fourth quarter last year, just by raising your prices significantly, it can change your whole business. I mean, it's unbelievable. And it's funny because you think, and I don't mean you, but people think that, oh no, if I raise my prices, somebody will just go to somebody cheaper. And then somebody asked me one time, they said, are you trying to be the Walmart of the world or the Saks Fifth Avenue? I was like, ooh, that's interesting because if you're in between, you're competing with everybody. You can either be the cheapest or the most expensive. And if you're expensive, there's a certain type of client that's attracted to you for the fact you're expensive. Just like people drive expensive cars, not because they're better than the Honda Accord, because it's expensive. So it's very interesting. What I charged for a funnel build 2 years ago and what I charge now, it's very different. And I'm still having people go, oh, that's it. And I'm like, what is going on? So I'm just going to keep raising the price. And like you said, cash flow is everything, because when you have cash flow, you have the ability to invest in people and programs to get things going, to get things addressed that need to be addressed. When you have no cash flow, you really have no options. The first 18 months of my business, I remember my wife saying, how are we going to pay the mortgage next week? I don't know, figure it out. Well, like, what's your plan? Like, what are you doing with this business? Still trying to figure that out. And then finally I had to have this hard talk with myself that, like, what's my business model here? Like, how am I going to make money every month? Like, where's the money going to come from? Is it repeatable? And is it scalable? And once I started looking at it that way, I'm like, all this stuff I do that's pretty and shiny doesn't equate to sales. Like, I don't care about this anymore. It's something I talk to a lot of new entrepreneurs with frequently. It's like, you're focused on the exciting stuff because you're in that honeymoon phase of entrepreneurship. Once your savings is gone and you still have no plan, then it'll be a very different experience for you. And I don't say that because I want them to fail. I want them to pay attention to the important stuff as fast as possible. So,
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
yeah,
I see a lot of people get caught up in stuff that just doesn't matter. Probably the thing that I repeat most to my clients is that they often will get so tied up in what they're delivering, and they'll forget about what the client is buying.
yep.
And those are usually two very different things. Like the mechanism that you use, so we have one client who is a coach, and he's a really great coach. And, he's always concerned with how many calls they get and, that what access they have to him and all that. I'm like, nobody cares. Like what's the outcome you're going to give them?
There you go.
And then, figure out how you can give that to them as quickly as you can, ideally with the least amount of involvement from you, because they don't care about that. They're not paying you to be to be their friend. They don't want to hang out. They got stuff to do. Get them the result.
Yep.
And, and I think for everybody, like getting to that level of understanding of what am I really selling here? What are they really buying? And, and then building the business around that helps you really kind of focus on, well, what am I doing? You mentioned this idea of am I Walmart or am I Saks Fifth Avenue? One of the big mistakes that we see is people want to be the Saks Fifth Avenue, but you got to give a Saks Fifth Avenue experience. So when I walk into Saks Fifth Avenue, very different than when I walk into Walmart. Yep. Frankly, I haven't walked into Walmart in, I think, 3 years, trying to avoid it.
Yeah.
And, there was a point in my life when I had to, and I don't anymore. I'd much rather be at a Saks Fifth Avenue.
Yep.
But, but you've got to create the experience to go along with it. And that's how you differentiate. And that's super attractive to people.
Yep. Absolutely. I love that. This for me has been I call it the invisible lead machine, the thing that's really, really helped my business stabilize. Give us some tips for generating referrals and repeat business.
Okay. So, gosh, we could go for hours on this. I wrote a book about this. So for everything that we're going to leave out here, if you want to go to Amazon and get a copy of Unstoppable Referrals, it'll fill in the details. But I discovered in 2012 that there was this block for business owners asking for referrals. And so I started to unpack that and figure out, well, why is this? Because we were giving them advice on how to go do it. And the advice was basically just ask all your clients and ask them often, and then follow up with any referrals that you get forever. And none of them did that. They go, oh yeah, it's really great advice, I'm going to do that. And then they didn't do anything.
Yep.
And so as I started asking questions and digging into that, what I really discovered was they felt uncomfortable doing it because they were basically going to the well with one of their very valuable clients, and they were taking water from the well again. And they just instinctively knew that there wasn't any value for the client in making the referral, even if the client loved them. Mm-hmm. It was all risk to the client. And if you look at fundamentally why most businesses don't get a ton of referrals, it's that the process is such that, it's all stacked in your favor. There's no advantage to the client, and you got to remove all the risk for them. Now, there are certain businesses where you can engineer an experience that people will talk about, but if we look at the typical service business, like an accounting firm, it's pretty hard to engineer an experience around getting your taxes or your books done that is going to make people rush out and talk about it. Mm-hmm. Okay. you
Hmm.
know, or law or engineering or architecture or whatever, right? So in businesses like that, where it's really difficult to create that kind of like experience that'll go viral, you've got to orchestrate the whole process a little bit. And the way that we figured out how to do that was really to take all of the wisdom that you've got, all the expertise you've got, get that down into a package. And so we might package that in a book, or we might package it in a presentation that would be delivered as a webinar or a seminar.
Hmm.
And then we can go to our clients and say, you know, like if I were doing this, I'd come to you and say, hey, Jason, you know, I'm on this absolute mission to transform the way that small businesses get referrals. In fact, I wrote a book about it, and I know you know people that would benefit from getting all of the information that's in this book. I'd love to sit down with you and brainstorm who we could send this book to together as a gift from you.
Hmm.
What do you say? They
There
go,
you
oh
go.
yeah, I'd love to brainstorm. And we're going to give them a copy of the book. Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden you've taken it from being a really risky thing, where now I'm asking you to send people that you know and care about into a sales meeting with me, which they don't want to go to, you know, and we've flipped that around, and now you're giving them a gift of this book. And there's like, a book never jumped up and bit anybody.
Hmm.
Nobody ever lost a fortune because they read a book, you know, or were given a book. And frankly, I've asked hundreds of entrepreneurs this now. You know, have you ever been offended when somebody gave you a book?
No.
No, even if you didn't like it, right?
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
keep it because, like, who throws books away?
Exactly. And so, so, you know, there's really no downside for the person making the referral. There's no downside for you, because you're going to now live on, you know, that person's desk or their bookshelf. And it allows you to play the long game, you know, and you can do the same thing with webinars or seminars. You don't have to have a book, but a book is sort of the gold standard for being able to do this. It's the easiest way to get people to do it because it's the lowest commitment.
Hmm. Absolutely. Beautiful. I knew this would be good stuff. One more quick question for you. I'm just curious to see what you think about this. Kind of unrelated to anything we've talked about today, but do you think that you always hear people talk about niching down? Do you think that people can just make up a niche and go after it and be successful, or do you like kind of to let the niche pick you? What are your thoughts on
You know, it's isn't that the kind of eternal marketing question?
that?
Um, I I think you can approach it from both angles, and we tend to take it a business at a time. I love to, when we're working with a client, I love to look at who their existing clients are, because you may actually see the pattern there. Like, here they've got this, you know, group of this subgroup of clients that's really profitable for them. They like working with them. The clients get good results, and they're sort of a cohesive group, and that can be a really easy way to answer the niche question. You know, but you certainly can make it up and go after it. But, you know, when you're making it up, you know, I think the key is to look for a group that actually identifies themselves. You
Yep.
know, if it's something that you've made up and isn't reflective of the way that niche describes itself, then you may have problems,
Yep.
you know, because the reason you want to do that, and everybody's confused about this, I think the reason to narrow down is mostly so that your message will resonate. And when we say resonate, what that really looks like is when they see your marketing, they go, oh my gosh, that's for me,
Yep.
you know.
It's well explained.
And yeah, and so if you can niche it down to that point. And the other thing people get all, you know, wrapped up in their underwear about with niching is they think, oh my God, I'm gonna have to turn away all this business. Like, no, that's not the point. You can keep taking checks from anybody you want to take checks from.
Yeah.
But for your marketing, you need to pick somebody to focus on, so that when you put it out there, it's actually going to work for
Yep. I think that's well said. I see a lot of people doing that thing where they make up the niche and then, like, nobody identifies himself and they're like, where's everybody at? And I'm like, how'd you
you.
come
Well,
up
yeah,
with
you
that?
made up a group that doesn't actually exist.
There you go. Very nice. Well, if somebody watching and listening today is interested in learning more about you or your book, what's the best way they can reach out to you?
So what we've done, we've set up a page just for all of your intentionally inspirational listeners. And if they go to unstoppableceo.net/IIMT, IIMT, And when they go there, they can get a copy of my book for free. They can download it. There is also a link on there to a guide we put together on how to pre-sell your prospects, so that when you're sitting across the table from them, they've already decided that you're their guy or you're their gal. And if you'd like to reach out and talk with me, there's a link on there where you can book a call.
Awesome. Well, very, very good, Steve. I really appreciate your time, your expertise, and the conversation today.
Yeah, it's been fun, Jason. Thanks for having me.
No problem.